One question we occasionally get asked, especially when a big locomotive is being overhauled, is will it be put into mainline service? And the answer normally is no. But that sounds a bit pessimistic, so we thought we'd show you just some of what's involved in taking a locomotive out on the big railway. Hello folks and welcome to the Watercress line. Now please forgive the attire before I start. I'm currently on break after doing some instructing for one of our driving experiences, albeit on the firing side. Absolutely great fun, well worth a look. Do look at watercressline.co.uk for that one. Now the ideal would be we have an engine that's mainline certified that we can go and have a good look at. However, here at the Watercress line we don't just yet. Weybridge, as you may know, the current plan is to get it out running on the main line. Now, as I mentioned, we do get asked, and quite a few heritage railways get asked, about whether locomotives are going to be put out for the main line when they are overhauled. We had quite a few questions with Canadian Pacific. Now, some of you may know from the Watercress line's history is that we did actually used to run a mainline steam rail tour from here, known as the Green Train. Now, understandably, the railway has changed in a few years since daylight rail tours and the Green Train did run. So to find out a little bit more about what's involved, as a special treat, we've gone a little bit further afield. Now to find out a little bit more about what it takes to take a locomotive out on the main line, we've come here to Battersea, to Stewart's Lane Depot, to see a very special locomotive indeed. A rebuilt merchant navy, just like Canadian Pacific will be, gives us a fantastic taste of what we had to look forward to. Called by some the fastest mirror in the south, you can normally see this engine on the Belmont British Pullman. Folks, may I present Mainline. Now let's start with the easy one, the technology. Understandably, the railways have evolved quite a way since these were out in service out on the main line, so there's new equipment required to ensure that they can run safely out on mainline metals.
Hello, my name's Ethan. I'm a volunteer with the MNLPS who look after Mainline, and today we're going to be talking about some of the air braking systems on the loco and the technology that comes with it to allow us to run on the national network. The system you've got in front of you is a modified version of what these engines originally were built with, as we've added air brake capabilities to help the engine run with modern stock. Additionally to that, we've added AWS and TPWS, which we'll discuss later, which is a signalling safety system to allow the engine to integrate with modern trains. The system itself is pretty simple. You've got an air brake here, which has been added. The brake valve is an M8 from modern diesel such as Class 37s. And then underneath the floor, there's a series of brake valves that allows this air brake to talk to the vacuum brake and steam brake that's still as originally fitted to the engine. To get the brake system to work, you first charge the air brake, which gives you 72.5 psi to release. You also need to switch on the vacuum brake ejector, which creates the vacuum as originally would be the case for the engine. And here you have a steam brake, which acts on the loco itself, with the vacuum acting on the tender and any other vacuum brake stop that the engine might pull. This air brake can control both the vacuum and then the vacuum can control the steam in a proportional manner. So what you may have noticed if you've ever seen Mainline running is sometimes you see clouds of steam shooting out the tender. Well, those clouds of steam are actually the exhaust from our air pump, which is driven by steam to create the pressure for the brake. It works on a similar principle to the vacuum system, but rather than using negative pressure to apply brakes, it's positive pressure instead. So two systems that we touched on earlier was AWS and TPWS. And what these are automatic warning system and train protection warning system. They're a continuation of an idea brought in by BR in the early 50s that basically when a signal shows a cautionary aspect, it will sound a horn to alert the driver to this, and if the driver does not acknowledge this horn in time, it will automatically apply the brake. TPWS is a little bit more complicated than AWS and is a grid system. And that's designed to stop you if there's any hazard. So if you triggered an overspeed, or you've gone a bit fast, or you've gone past the red signal, that's designed as another layer of protection to stop the train. Now that ring means that there's a green signal ahead. If it's a yellow or a red signal, the following warning sound will sound. And then once you acknowledge that sound, you get a sunflower displayed as a visual reminder to whether or not the signal ahead was clear or a cautionary aspect. Now, if you fail to acknowledge that horn within the designated time, it will automatically apply the brakes, like this. And as you can see, the brake demand light is now showing, and it will not let you recreate a brake until the timeout period has elapsed. In this cabinet here, we've got two systems. We've got the OTMR, which is on-train monitoring for railways. This system is basically like a black box in aircraft, and it records various things on the locomotive that can be used in an incident to see what has happened. It can also be used for driver assessments to see how drivers have been handling the engine. And it's also a good method of protection if there's any doubt about what's occurred. It's all recorded here, it can be downloaded and checked. So the second system up here is GSMR, which is used for contacting the Network Rail signallers. It replaces the traditional signal post telephones of yesteryear, many of which have been decommissioned or removed. Here you've got the main handset, which is the control unit for the GSMR. It includes a phone book for necessary contacts and also allows you to put in your head code and register what train you're running. This here is the emergency call button. When you press that, it initiates what's called a group call, where all the trains in the area will be put into one call and the signallers will be alerted so they can turn all signals to danger in case of an emergency. The second button here is for a similar call but at a lower level of risk, so it won't be as high priority as the emergency group call. So without the technology like the OTMR and the GSMR radio here and the AWS and the TPWS that we spoke about earlier, we wouldn't be allowed to run this engine on the national network, as these safety devices are critical to the safe operation of the mainline railway and the heritage trains that are allowed to operate upon it.
So that's the technology bit done. Now there are a few more elements, and first of all are the people who go into this coach, the support crew, arguably the unsung heroes of every tour.
The requirements for a support crew trip with Mainline is between 8 to 10 people each trip. So the head of the support crew is a person called the responsible officer, who's the RO. He's the bridge between the official railway and the MNLPS. He's also in charge of looking after those representatives who've been chosen to work on a tour on that day. The next person below him is the chief mechanical engineer or the duty engineer, and their job is responsible for looking after the locomotive mechanically. So before, during and after the tour, their sole responsibility is looking after the sort of the health of the engine when it's out on a tour, and looking after it when it needs to be serviced at particular points, or like we are today, before the tour and after the tour as well. Then everybody else involved has smaller jobs, most of which looking into coaling and watering, and also helping out with the general assistance of running the tour before, during and after. When it comes to looking after the locomotive overnight, we have 1 to 2 people that will solely be looking after the fire, and they take it in turns during the night to keep everything in order on the footplate. The coach behind us is Mercator, which is a BR Mark II, it's 17096. It travels with the locomotive pretty much everywhere we go. There's an odd occasion where you might not see the support coach, but that's on particular Pullman trips. The whole point of the support coach is in the name. It has all of our travelling tools, it's got all of our equipment. It also takes the support crew members on the trip, but equally and most importantly, it carries the kitchen. So it keeps us fed and watered, which is what we need on a support crew trip. So it does travel with us a lot of the time. It's a very important part of what we do with Mainline, and it is a great coach.
Now, aside from people and technology, we need to somehow wind this all together. There's still an extra phase, the FTR Fitness to Run exam. That is what's happening today at this moment. The locomotive is about to wheel outside to lift the safety valves to complete the test. Now, to find out a little bit more about those logistical challenges and what's involved in this FTR, we chatted to today's responsible officer, Dave.
Well, today we're on what we call a prep day for a Belmont Kent lunch tomorrow. Most of what we're doing really is cleaning the loco, carrying out whatever maintenance currently applies, lubrication, steam testing, fitness to run exam, FTR as we call it, and having the loco ready, cleaned, prepped tonight with a view that there's virtually nothing to do tomorrow morning before we go. Fitness to run exam is in effect a 4 or 5 hour MOT test. It has to be undertaken prior to any mainline trip. It is carried out by, as far as DB is concerned, there are 3 of us that do fitness to run exams for DB Cargo, of which I am one. It basically covers a complete overview of the engine mechanically and the coach. The coach has to be done separately, separate documentation. All of that, that's quite complex checklists, mechanical stuff, operational stuff, functional stuff, secure, that sort of thing, safety issues. Takes about 4 or 5 hours, includes quite a comprehensive brake test, and that documentation then is sent off to DB Cargo, and once they receive it, they actually enter it on TOPS, which is Network Rail's recording system, to confirm that we are good to go. The first logistical challenge is getting a support crew together. We normally operate with a support crew of 8, and currently there are 2 of us that are organising rostering of support crews, and we've got about 30-35 people that we can draw from, including some people that have to have engineering background, because we always have an RO, responsible officer, we have a duty engineer, and then we have 6 other people of varying degrees of experience, but if we don't use them they don't gain experience. So yeah, that's that side of things. The logistics are, fortunately in our case, dealt with in some respects by people other than the support crew, the planning team, who will organise remote watering requirements, remote coaling requirements if that applies. If they're long haul trips, we might well have a coal lorry in a yard somewhere. So we have coaling and water to deal with. And on occasions, if it is really a long haul or going to be a really long day, we might have a support crew of 10 as opposed to 8. During the trip, we will have a quite close relationship with the 3 footplate crew, driver, fireman and traction inspector. We always have an owner's rep up on the footplate, basically I suppose there to oversee what happens and make sure that we're not concerned with the way the loco's being handled, but we've done this so many times now with DB crews that doesn't apply, but we always have an owner's rep up there. And they work very closely with us. They have to sign paperwork for us, and we have to show them paperwork evidencing who we are, PTS details, etc. And that's the sort of normal routine. And that paperwork then afterwards is again sent off to DB Cargo for their system, or West Coast if it was a West Coast job. Yeah, it certainly makes it all worthwhile. Especially, I mean, the nicest thing I think is when you see a crowd of people on a platform that aren't necessarily expecting to see us. We make a lot of noise and they jump back in shocked and big smiles. I mean, people only wave at steam trains for some reason. Everybody gets on well and everybody comes away driving home thinking, yeah, I did that, that was good. That was good. And we come back. And if it wasn't good, we wouldn't come back.
So there we are. Technology, paperwork, people, and a lot of logistics involved in running one of these out on the main line. It's important to remember that when this locomotive and support coach goes out of those shutter doors, it is effectively an island. It has to work and perform. It must run on time. It cannot break. Not to use the old cliche, but failure is just not an option. Although it is, but an expensive one at that if you start delaying trains and have to get rescued. But that's why it's so important that these prep days and the fitness to run exams are performed. It seems like a lot of work, but it really does pay off. That's it from us this time, folks, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone here at Stewart's Lane and the Merchant Navy Locomotive Preservation Society for chatting to us and showing us just some of what's involved. It has been an absolutely fantastic day. So thank you guys once again, and we'll see you next time.